176 people have died of Lassa fever here in Nigeria. That is according to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That is what they have confirmed. Now, the latest epidemiological report released by the NCDC outlined that as of epidemiological week 43, 2025, the case fatality rate now stands at 18.4%. That is up from 16.6% recorded during the same period in 2024. Lassa fever, described by the World Health Organization as an acute viral hemorrhagic illness caused by the Lassa virus, is transmitted primarily through contact with food or household items contaminated with urine or feces or infected rats. Now, according to the World Health Organization, the disease is endemic in the rodent population across parts of West Africa. Well, in the meantime, the flash of lightning and the roar of thunder can be quickly followed by the wheezing gasp of an asthma attack. That's according to a new study. Now, thunderstorms appear to trigger sharp increases in asthma-related ER visits. That's according to lead researcher Dr. Diala Merhab, an internal medicine resident at the University of Kansas Medical Center. Now, they go on to say that because storms are unpredictable, patients and healthcare providers should include storm-specific precautions in asthma action plans. Well, joining me in the studio is Dr. Blossom Maduafokwa. Beautiful, beautiful name. She is a consultant in public health, physician, a creative director, and lead instructor, Blossom's Fitness Hub. That's where she's the lead instructor at. She joins me here in the studio. It is good to have you there. First and foremost, I want you to give me a first in-person pronunciation, a tutorial on how to correctly pronounce your name.
Thank you so much for having me. So
always.
It's Maduafokwa.
Maduafokwa.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Where is that from?
That's Anambra State.
Wow, so it's fitting. It's fitting to have you here. Well, you're most welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. I mean, we were, of course, talking about Anambra elections, and I know you've got plenty to say about that. But what we really brought you into the studio is really to discuss two health stories. One being Lassa fever, and then the other asthma attacks and how they could be triggered by the weather. Correct. Let's start with Lassa fever because it is something that is quite pertinent to the Nigerian populace. We went into the causes and really what it is in the introduction there, but please, being that you are a physician, it would be wonderful to give our audience a good lay person's introduction to what Lassa fever is, what causes it, and how we can protect ourselves.
Okay, thank you so much. So Lassa fever is a viral infection. So we call it a viral hemorrhagic infection because it causes people to hemorrhage. So it's a viral hemorrhagic infection that it's caused by the Lassa fever virus.
Yes.
So the Lassa fever virus actually infects rats. So we call them the mastomys rat or the multi-mammate rat. They're very characteristic because on their underbelly, they have multiple breasts. So that's how to identify them. So these rats, the infection is primarily in that rodent population. However, Lassa fever can be transmitted from rodents to humans, and that's where we have the intersection. So when it's transmitted to humans, for example, if the rodent passes urine, or people dry foods outside and then the rodent passes urine on the food products, people ingest the food or inhale products from the infected material, that individual can then get infected with Lassa fever. When someone gets infected with Lassa fever, they can present with fever, they can have malaise, body aches, headaches, sore throats, vomiting, diarrhea, and then characteristically they can bleed from all parts of the body, from the nose, the mouth, etc. So Lassa fever is a very important public health issue because it has a high case fatality rate. That means that a number of people, let's say 100 people have Lassa fever, up to 10 to 20 of those individuals could die of Lassa fever. So it has a very high case fatality rate. Again, it's a public health issue because healthcare professionals that care for those patients are also at risk for having Lassa fever.
That is definitely something that is incredibly eye-opening.
Yes.
And clearly, just naturally, as Nigerians, by the very nature of how our country is set up, many people can be clearly susceptible to it. And as we've
Correct.
seen in the introduction there, it can be fatal.
Yes.
So when we are looking at real causes, not so much causes, but really solutions to this issue, what would you identify are really the best places or the best practices really to tackle this medically? And does Nigeria have the infrastructure to do that?
So people don't realize that Lassa fever was discovered 56 years ago. So we've actually had in 1969 in a town called Lassa in northern Nigeria. So we've had 56 years to study this disease and provide solutions. So now, the key to the transmission of Lassa fever obviously is from rodents to man. So that intersection is a very important area that we have to focus on. For example, environmental sanitation is very, very important. Managing and controlling the rodent population. Another layer that we have to focus on include things like public education. So educating people about not leaving your food products outside because of the systemic issues that we have. People don't have resources for, say, drying products or preserving food products in the house because lack of power, etc., lack of resources. So they have to dry these food products outside, and these rodents then access the food products. So providing those resources for people and then educating the public about things they need to do. If you see, for example, a rodent that is lying down dead, don't touch it, you report it. Ensure that you clean your environment regularly. Ensure that you ensure that you have rat traps, for example. Also, environmental sanitation agencies have rodenticides, chemicals that can actually kill rodents. So these are some of the ways that we can control the rodent population, but also public education so that people ensure that simple things as simple as regular hand washing, ensure that when you do have these symptoms, you seek help from a healthcare provider, and that you're not out there treating malaria and typhoid like we usually always do.
How would someone be able to tell the difference, do you think? Because as you've rightfully said, if someone does present those symptoms, perhaps a fever, muscle pain, they would immediately put it down to, maybe I just have malaria.
Yeah.
When should someone say, actually, I think this should be something I should get checked out by a professional?
So people should always be checked out by professionals, to be honest.
That should be the default.
That should be the default. However, we know we do have a lot of systemic problems that affect people's health-seeking behavior. For example, someone feels I can't afford healthcare, so I'm going to go through all these routes to treat myself, and then it gets too late before they seek help from a professional. So people should actually seek help when you have these symptoms. Our primary health centers, for example, are free. People don't realize this. So you can seek help from a primary health center. Again, we try to emphasize for healthcare professionals particularly to have a high index of suspicion, because lots of cases will present as fever, malaise, body aches, headache. So to ensure that the healthcare professional is rightly educated to protect themselves while they're protecting and treating their patients.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I mean, let's move on to the second part of this conversation, which was asthma, because that was very eye-opening for me to read, because naturally when you think of asthma, which I know you'll go in to tell us what it is, but, just as, a journalist and not a doctor, when I hear about asthma, I think, okay, this is a breathing issue that perhaps could be triggered by dust or overexertion, or if you're, playing PE. I remember when I was in school and when we were going for our PE lessons, physical education, certain students would have their asthma inhalers at the office just in case they overexerted themselves. So to hear that perhaps the climate and weather could be a trigger for an asthma attack, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Firstly, on what asthma is, how it presents, and then this new development, if you can call it that, about how the weather affects it.
So asthma is basically an allergic reaction that affects the lungs. So individuals that are susceptible, so for example, if you have what we call an allergen, so like pollen, dust, animal hair, for example, when those individuals inhale those substances, there are chemicals that are triggered in their airway, and those chemicals cause the the muscles of the airway to contract. So when the muscles contract, the person immediately is not able to breathe in oxygen. And at the same time, their bodies are trying to fight that inflammation, the inflammatory reaction, and their bodies begin to produce lots of fluid. So the person is not able to breathe. There's lots of fluid in the person's airway. That's when we say the person has an asthmatic attack. So usually it presents characteristically with what we call wheezing. So the person's breathing, because the air is trying to pass through a tiny hole, the breathing sounds start to sound like whistling sounds. So that's what we call wheezing. So that's typically how an individual will present with an asthmatic attack.
Wonderful. Okay, so when we are hearing this and this new line that perhaps thunderstorms could trigger it, how does that work? Is that a medical issue per se? Is that an emotional one? How do the two worlds collide?
So that's a very interesting question. And the study that you're referring to was done in Wichita, Kansas, in the US. People don't actually know that thunderstorms have been associated with asthmatic attacks for many years. But this study tried to actually characterize it in the US. So the way it works, when you have thunderstorms, you have high winds, when pollen gets released. So when pollen gets released and you have high winds, you have lightning breaking down the pollen and the allergens, they get dispersed into the atmosphere. And people that have asthma now gain access to those allergens when they breathe in the pollen. So that's actually scientifically how it works.
That's very, very fitting to know.
Yes.
And being that you are a fitness practitioner, clearly you understand the importance of a well-balanced diet, a healthier lifestyle. When we're looking at the Nigerian populace, if we take our relationship to foods, for example, even across different ethnic lines, a lot of our foods have variety. So you definitely have starch-heavy foods, but you also have many soups that do lean to the healthier side. When it comes to an aging population wanting to take care of themselves so that they can live longer, healthier lives, what choices should they be making in the kitchen?
I love this question because it's something I'm very passionate about. So people don't understand why they gain weight as they get older. And there are several reasons, right? Your basal metabolic rate drops as you get older. But you're still consuming the same quantity of food that you consumed when you were 20. So your body now is unable to handle all the calories that you consume, and then the excess is stored as fat. So the individual, you're looking at yourself 5 years, what's going on? But I'm still eating the same thing. So now you need to make the right choices in the kitchen. So, and this is what I say to my clients. You have to do 3 things. 1, the quantity of food, the quality of food, and the preparation of the food. So the quantity of food, your food portions must match your age and your level of physical activity. So as you get older, studies have shown that your body requires fewer calories to live. So your calorie consumption needs to match your age. Also needs to match your level of physical activity. For example, I'm a doctor, I go to the hospital, I sit down, I see patients, say, from morning till afternoon. I sit down all day, why do I need that large plate of food? Because I'm not physically active. So the food I'm consuming does not match my level of physical activity. And then the second thing is the quality of food. So, a lot of our foods are highly processed, what we call white carbohydrates. So lean more towards carbohydrates that have color, like your beans, like your sweet potatoes. Those have carbohydrates, but also have other nutrients like vitamins, like fiber, that are very good for your gut, good for weight management. So that's for the quality of food. Also ensure that you have what we call your micronutrients, so like vitamins A, B, C, D, E. You need all of these vitamins to ensure that your body has resources to maintain your entire health as you get older. The third thing is the preparation of the food. So I can eat one plantain. One plantain is 220 calories. I can fry it. I can boil it. I fry it, it's hitting about 500 calories.
Yes.
I boil it, it's still 220 calories. So when you're young, you can probably get away with some of these things because your basal metabolic rate is probably high. And you're young, you're more physically active, you can burn those calories. But as you get older, where your BMR is not on your side, you have to pay attention to the way you prepare your food. So there are other things you can do aside from frying. There's air frying, there's boiling, there's baking,
grilling,
there's grilling. Yes. So those are my three quality, quantity, and food preparation.
No, it all makes a lot of sense. Well, Dr. Blessing, over the course of this conversation, we've talked about personal responsibility and how they play a role in a lot of issues. So, for example, personal hygiene standards would play a role to your susceptibility to Lassa fever.
Correct.
Understanding your environment and, again, making sure that you're keeping yourself in as healthy a condition as possible so that if the weather does conduct itself how it may, it won't have a detrimental effect to our health care, talking about asthma. And then lastly, when we're talking about health and relationships with food, there's also a personal relationship there. Correct. I know we are running out of time, but I do want to ask you about your thoughts, because sometimes when it comes to healthy living and just eating, sometimes we as people may eat for more reasons than hunger.
Correct.
How then can someone identify, or what alternatives can somebody apply so that they can have a healthier relationship with food no matter the age?
Okay, so that's a big conversation.
Yes.
Relationship with food, we've seen that usually that's at the background of the reason why someone sort of eats more than they should. But there are several things that we don't have a lot of time, but there are things that I tell my clients. One, you have to find a why. What I call a why. Why do I want to be healthy? Or why do I want to maintain my weight? You need to have a reason, because it's that reason that will pull you back to the things that you're supposed to be doing. Because most of us actually sort of have an idea of what we should do, but it's just to actually get it done. So for some people, I have a client, their why was they saw their parents aging very poorly. And they said, I don't want to be that person. So that's their why. Some other people, they have a role model. Oh, I want to be like this person. So that's their why. So you do have to find your why. And it's your why that sort of keeps you in that space where you're like, okay, yes, I need to eat the right quantity. I need to eat the right quality of food. Definitely. And I need to prepare my food the right way so that I can be healthy.
Oh, well, that is definitely an excellent place for us to end this conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Blossom. That is insightful for me, and I'm sure for our wider audience. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.